Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles. Welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC Des Moines. We have 12 fights in Iowa this weekend for a pretty fun card. Actually, coming off of another fun one last week, and we have ourselves a pretty good stretch of fights here, and I am looking forward to it. If you guys can't tell, different setup. We're back in the Great White North for the next couple weekends, but content nonetheless. You're a little more zoomed up than I'd like. That's okay. We'll talk fights regardless. And a card like this, let's go over my quick thoughts, how I think the fight's going to go, my betting thoughts, and also my DraftKings spots. I may not be able to play DraftKings up here in Ontario, but I'll tell you what I would. Regardless, I am looking forward to this card. It should be a very, very good one. Make sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, check out CoolBet, where we also have a Discord launching this week, so be sure to check that out, and a best bet video will be out later in the week, as well as Establish the Run for more premium DraftKings content. They have been killing it over there. I do podcasts with them every Thursday as well, and it's an honor to work with such a good team. So without any more time being wasted, let's go out there, let's talk some fights, and let's do this. The fight I started with the 7-2 Ivana Petrovic versus the 3-3 Juliana Killer Miller. And I think this is a pretty fun one, regardless of the lack of name value. I think it'd be pretty fun, mostly because it's a Juliana Miller fight. She is not really technical in any aspect, but she's a scrapper. She's someone who you would kind of find at like an alley of a crackhead, someone you don't want to see in a parking lot, right? Not much technicality, but she's psycho. She's crazy. She kind of scares me a little bit. And that lack of technicality is made up for by her aggression, her volume, and a pretty nasty ground game she does get you down there. Decent cardio at that as well. She's had her struggles at the UFC, has not really been able to acclimate to a better UFC talent, but she's someone who will fight for your money. She's there to be hitting the feet, but someone who can get nasty in some of these exchanges. Ivana Petrovic is probably the better fighter of the two. She herself has a pretty solid wrestling game, can kickbox from the outside, and that's probably why she's favored in this matchup here, but I don't really think she's that good. Has not really dealt with pressure that good either. I mean, she's coming off a loss to Jamie Lynn Horth, got subbed by Luana Carolina. Her only UFC victory is the Young Na, although we don't know she has those skills. At the end of the day, I understand why she's favored. I think she's going to have a clear striking advantage against someone in Juliana Miller who is definitely there to be hit. There's no denying that. And she maybe is going to have a good offensive wrestling game plan against her as well. But I think the line might be a little wide. I think Juliana Miller is I still think she's kind of coming into her own here. And I still think she is someone who, if you don't have your wits about it, if you're there to be broken, someone who can go out there and break people with her aggression, with her psycho-ness down the stretch. So I think the better fighter is Petrovic. I'm going to pick her to win, but I do think the line is wide. And Juliana Miller is someone who I'm kind of interested in just from a perspective of I think she's a dog, and I think she's someone who can look to break you if you don't have the most resiliency in your game plan. DraftKings-wise, it's really hard for me to get to Petrovic. I know she's going to have, in theory, a grappling path to victory, some volume on the feet as well. She's going to be able to win this fight, but only scored 102 points against Liang Na. Only would have scored 82 if she would have won that fight against Horth. Not the best pure DraftKings score. I know Juliana Miller is going to force a pace, but I just don't think the ceiling is as good for Petrovic on a card like this where there are plenty of options. Kind of rather take the stab on Juliana Miller, who scored 115 points in her one win inside the UFC as an underdog. I think she has a better ceiling. Dog or pass from DraftKings, but not my favorite fight in general. We then move it along to the 9-3 Thomas the Train Peterson versus the 11-8 Dontel Mays, and just a sloppy heavyweight fight. You're coming off that knockout loss to Godziev from someone like Thomas Peterson, whereas Dontel Mays lost to Godziev as well, but then he was just heel hooked a minute to Walter Walker there. So two fighters who are definitely not at the peak of the heavyweight division, and it's going to be a sloppy fight. You have someone here in Peterson who's going to be the better grappler. I think he's got more process behind his game. He wants to take you down. He's got solid volume and durability on the feet there as well to sustain a solid pace for at least 15 minutes and win against a low level of competition, but he wants to take you down, and from top position, he can be pretty crafty. Dontel Mays is funny because, sure, he does have decent power, but he's just not been able to put things together. We know he can wrestle. He got 6 takedowns against Josh Parisian, but has not really gotten a takedown since then. He's not really going to be able to go out there and land a ton of volume. Is there to be hitting the feet, can be able to accept bottom position as well. He just got his flaws about him. So in a spot like this, it's a sloppy heavyweight fight. I don't really want to lay juice on Thomas Peterson, but I am going to pick him to win. I do think he's got more process behind his game, and I do think he's going to go out there, shoot takedowns, win minutes on the feet. Shall it come to that as well? And I think he has more paths to win it. DraftKings-wise, though, I guess there's some variance, so maybe for that reason I might want some KO upside of someone like Dontel Mays, who is probably the more powerful striker, but I can't really get to it. I mean, Thomas Peterson only scores 76 in his one win inside the UFC. Sure, he probably has some takedown equity, but at 8.9K, prefer to play other people in this range. Another fight that's kind of dog or pass, but I am picking Thomas Peterson to get it done. Then we have the 8-4 Gaston Bolanos versus the 8-2 Quang Bang Lee. Another very fun fight. Quang Bang Lee coming off of a unfortunate knockout loss in his last one, but he is a pretty fun fighter to go out there and watch. Ton of power on the feet, was able to wrestle, even get a round off of Chris Gutierrez there as well. A pretty solid fighter, but he is there to be hit. If his durability is gone, that's definitely going to lose points from that way as well. And he's just not the specialist in any area you want to see. He's not the best pure technical striker, not the best pure wrestler, although he is well-rounded enough to compete in all those areas. Gaston Bolanos, he is that specialist. Coming off a nice win over Cortavius Romius, but he is that type of striker and one-dimensional in that aspect. A ton of spinning stuff, a very good highlight reel at that as well, but he's a striker. That's all he is. He's not going to mix in the wrestling that much either. He is also there to be hit on the feet as well. But someone who is going to accept the back foot, span a ton of volume, lead those kicks, and focus on his primary attribute, which is that striking. In a matchup like this, I understand why Bolanos is favored, but I also understand why there's steam coming out of Quang Bang Lee. I think he is the more proactive wrestler of the two. Although Bolanos has a good get-up game, he is able to be taken down in the first place, and Quang Bang Lee has been able to win rounds that way as well. On the feet, I do think that Bolanos has more volume. He's a more technical striker and is going to win based off of his footwork all around the outside, but Quang Bang Lee can land a big shot. They've seen Bolanos rocked. There is a path there as well. So I've been going back and forth all week on this one. I think what I'm going to come down to is I'm going to slightly lean towards Gaston Bolanos to win this fight. I think his footwork, I think his activity, his volume is enough for him to edge out a decision. But the fighter with more DraftKings upside, the fighter with more wrestling path to victory and power on the feet is going to be Quang Bang Lee, and he's going to be my preferred DraftKings option of the two. So I slightly lean towards Bolanos. I've been going back and forth all day, but I do prefer someone like Quang Bang Lee on DraftKings, who at 7.7K, we know can land takedowns, we know his power. I think he's a solid contrarian tournament option in the mid-range, whereas Bolanos, again, another favorite I'm not really liking too much. 64 in his first win, 80 in his last one. Not a very good high score, not a guy who's going to get a knockout all too often, not a guy who's going to wrestle at all, purely based on striking volume and maybe a knockout. So I'm picking Gaston Bolanos to win. Another dogger pass on DraftKings. We'll get some favorites we like. Let's move on. And speaking of the 15-8 Jillian Robertson, she is a favorite here going up against the 17-5-2 Marina Rodriguez. Marina Rodriguez, we know her, we love her as well, a very solid striker, and she is someone who has been fought at the top of the division for a while. It's getting up there in age, but we know what we're getting out of her. A very solid Muay Thai game, ton of volume on the feet, ton of kicks, solid power as well, but someone who wants to keep it up on her feet. When she gets taken down, she is very easily controlled. She's been finished. She's kind of on a bit of a dry run recently because these better grapplers of the division have been able to take advantage of that. On the flip side of things, look at someone like Jillian Robertson making the drop to 115 has looked great recently. Her physicality is shown down here. She's been able to get people down to the ground easier, where we all know she's one of the best grapplers of the division. She's an absolute killer on the mat. She's got a ton of array of submissions and is even able to implement some ground and pound from top control as well. She is a very, very good ground fighter. So simply put, it is striker versus grappling matchup. On the feet, Marina Rodriguez is going to be probably levels above Jillian Robertson. Very good range, very good power. But on the mat, it's the opposite. Jillian Robertson is going to have a night and day advantage down there. She's able to work through position. She's got the size to match Marina Rodriguez, and she can probably keep her down there as long as she wants. She's also able to advance positions, and we have seen Rodriguez dominate on the mat, and now going up against the best grappler there is, I think Jillian Robertson is going to make quick work of it down there on the mat. So I think the difference in the grappling is much larger than the difference in the striking. I do think if this is a 50-minute striking affair, you pick Rodriguez. We have seen Robertson have a ton of success getting these fights down to the mat and dominating down there, and I think this one's no different. Give me Jillian Robertson. Because of that, a pretty solid option on DraftKings. In her last 4 wins, she scored 105, 105, 102, 101. Pretty good optics and pretty good scoring for someone who has such a clear path to victory. She's not going to want to stand and strike with Marina Rodriguez. I think she'll want to take her down early and implement that ground success. She also scored 117 in the first round win before. I think that the advantage is big enough for an early finish to be on the table. At 9.2K ground success, I do like her a lot this week. My preferred play, both on the pick to win and on the DraftKings side of things, 9.2. I will be getting to my Canadian girl here a lot. Then we have the 19-3 Azamat Bekaev versus the 7-1 Ryan Loder, and what I think is a pretty interesting fight. Now, I do think that Ryan Loder is the better wrestler of the two in this matchup. That is what he is. He is a one-dimensional former NCAA wrestler. He wants to take you down. He's very good at controlling you down there and very physically imposing in doing so, but no striking. Cardio's in question and doesn't really advance position enough to really threaten people down there, so he's definitely beatable. That's kind of why the line is the way it is, because he is beatable, and Azamat Bekaev, although having a decent ground game himself, has a lot better striking, a lot better attributes in a well-rounded MMA aspect to beat someone like Ryan Loder. For that reason, I get why he's the favorite. Although I do think Ryan Loder's going to win the ground exchanges, you have to favor Bekaev on the feet, probably in the cardio as well, and the guy who's proven to have durability as the fight goes on. But I'm struggling to see why the line is as wide as it is. I think that Ryan Loder is going to get the better of these wrestling exchanges. Ryan Loder is the bigger guy. We know what he wants to do, and he has the wrestling experience. I think he wins the first round at a very, very high clip. Now, can he sustain this pace for 3 rounds? Can he have the opportunity to finish? Or can he even keep up on the feet at all? That's a real question. But I'm really struggling to see the line as wide as it is, and I do think there is some value in the dog here in someone Ryan Loder, who is going to be the better wrestler of the two. Now, is he working on that striking game? Probably not, and Bekaev is able to hit hard. He's got finishes before. I think that's definitely a path. So, I don't know. I've been struggling with this one a lot. I think when it comes down to gun to my head pick, who do I think is going to win? It's going to be Bekaev, and he's got a more well-rounded skill set. I think he can keep his own on the ground deep and can separate himself on the feet, but not to a minus 360 point of view. And 6.9K Ryan Loder on DraftKings, someone who I definitely have some interest in. 110 in his debut against Valentina. I know this is a better fighter than Robert Valentin was in this spot here, but 6.9K, a fighter who I think has a clear path to victory and it comes with wrestling. I think that is a slate-breaking type of score if he does win. So he is my favorite GPP tournament play down low. I think he's got an opportunity to win this fight with the wrestling, but to pick a winner, it's probably Bekwev. Because of that, on DraftKings, Bekwev doesn't really rate out as well. He did score 113 in his first win, but if his win's not coming till later rounds with striking success, and if he's maybe losing that first round because of the wrestling, his ceiling may be limited. I may prefer some other fighters in this range. Another dogger pass for me fight on DraftKings. Tournament-wise, I do like me some Ryan Loder, but I did pick Azamat Bekwev. With the 15-8 Yana Santos versus the 29 Miesha Tate. An interesting fight here between two aging fighters of the division, but I do think this one will be decently fun. I think you look at the styles that they bring, and Yana Santos is going to have an ability to dictate the clinch, dictate the striking from range as well. I do think she's probably be the better striker against someone in Tate who is getting up there in age and is pretty one-dimensional in her approach. The difference she does have here is getting that one-dimensional approach, which is wrestling success, against someone with a 43% takedown defense. I think Miesha Tate is going to have the opportunity to dictate this ground game, and when you give me someone with such a clear path to victory on the mat, I tend to lead in the grappler in those situations. So sure, there's a world where Miesha Tate's getting too old for this and is not able to keep up in the feet and is going to lose the clinch exchanges and lose a fight from distance, but Yana Santos is no spring chicken either. She's someone who is definitely getting up there in age, someone who can be taken down, and someone who can be mauled down on the mat, which I do think Miesha Tate has some success. So give me Miesha Tate to win this fight with some ground success, with some advances from this position as well, and put up a pretty decent score in doing so. Because I think she wins and does so with wrestling. She scored 116 in her last win, 105 in her win before that. I do think she has a clear path to victory on the mat, getting an opponent to which she can implement that wrestling game plan. A very solid fighter for me at 8.3K to look to build out that mid-range in his lineups. Yana Santos, not getting to at all. She's kind of a fade for me because even at 7.9K, 87 in her last win, 91 before that, she's not going to have the same wrestling success as Tate. I think her path to victory is more disengaging and striking from the outside, one that isn't going to score that well. So Tate or pass, I do think she gets it done. I like Miesha Tate this week. One more for the cupcake. Hopefully she gets it done. Then on to the main card, we have the return of Jeremy Stephens, 29 and 21, versus the return of another fighter here in the 15-2 Mason Jones. Two different fighters returning for two different reasons. You have Jeremy Stephens, 29 and 21, has fought in PFL, BKFC. He is getting his wish because he has been so active in the UFC. This is in his hometown. He's coming back as sort of a fan favorite and a guy who is just more there on name value. Whereas someone in Mason Jones, someone who left the UFC to improve, someone who's still young, still with title aspirations, he's more coming back because he's earned it in this sort of thing, and he has paid his dues in the regional scene. I think this fight is going to be a pretty fun one that has all the makings of a very entertaining fight, but one where I have to agree with the wider line. Jeremy Stephens does not look good recently. He does still have a ton of power. There's no denying that, but he is someone who has struggled on the mat, has not looked very good in PFL or BKFC where he's been able to be hit. He is looking slower in those exchanges, and I just think he has more flaws. He's always live to land a powerful shot, but on the flip side of things, the defensive flaws and him getting up there in age certainly makes it for that this young guy, Mason Jones, who's extremely well-rounded, can strike, has durability in his own right as well. I think he can dictate where this fight takes place, and either if he's going to maul him on the ground or land more volume on the feet. I do think Mason Jones is often asking, who the hell is that guy? See, I'm not going to try an Irish accent, but you know what I mean there. Asking about Jeremy Stephens. So give me Mason Jones. I think he's the quicker fighter, more volume on the feet, better durability too, and a much better ground game if he wants to take it there. I do think that Jeremy Stephens has the puncher's chance, a ton of power, he can land a big shot, but will be slower, lack the volume, and lack the ground game he wants to this spot here. It is Mason Jones' fight to lose. DraftKings 9.5 is expensive for someone like Mason Jones. He did score 126 points in his one win, though, which has helped him go up there very well. That had 8 takedowns. I do think he has a fight he can definitely win. I think there'll be takedowns on the table, volume there. So he is certainly someone who I will be interested in paying up for. But as the most expensive fighter on the slate, I'd much prefer the 5 rounds that Sandhagen has, the grappling upside that Robertson has. It is hard to force him into a lot of those lineups. If you have the salary, go up there, get him. I think he's a solid option, but I'm not forcing him in. Stephens, I guess, is a punt play down low with his knockout power, but I think his path to victory is very, very limited. Give me Mason Jones. Then we have the 12-4 Cameron Smotherman versus the 11-2 Surrey City. Another interesting fight. I'm not the biggest Cameron Smotherman guy. I think he's a solid range fighter. He's got decent length. He's got solid jab, solid boxing at that as well, but he can be taken down. He was knocked out in a horrible loss to Charlampus Gregorio in the Dana White Contender Series. And sure, he beat Jake Hadley, but that was more of a deficiency on the Jake Hadley side of things. I do think that Smotherman is a beatable fighter, and I do think he's going to struggle to climb the ranks in the UFC. Can he get some wins? Certainly so. That's kind of why this line is close, because he's facing here a guy in Surrey City who I think is a way better fighter than someone like Cameron Smotherman, but who maybe fails IQ tests here and there. Surrey City has a much better, well-rounded skill set. I think he has the opportunity to beat someone like Smotherman on a lot of areas, but he has chosen to strike recently, and in doing so, you're giving Cameron Smotherman his best path. Surrey City, though, on the regional scene, very good takedowns, very good ground game, good cardio, weird Muay Thai, but the ability to go out there and land those big strikes is there as well. Someone who is well-rounded to win fights wherever they go and has the durability to back that as well. So, sure, if this is a 15-minute boxing affair, I think the hand speed of Smotherman is pretty solid. He could probably win this one, but if Surrey City has any brain cells about him, he'll land the takedowns, he'll land some big shots of his own right, and he not only has better finishing upside, but way better grappling upside. He should be winning this fight here. I do think Surrey City should be favored, and I do like him a lot. DraftKings-wise, the scores have not translated for something like Surrey City, but if he does get those takedowns, or he does get that finish upside, his ceiling is through the roof. So at 8.4K, very solid tournament option for me this week. I do like his upside. I do think he can go out there and score well. Smotherman, I guess, has a path to victory, so he could be a solid dog, but I've outlined many dogs I do like. I'm kind of leaning towards playing some tournament plays in City and leaving it at that. Then we have the 14-2 Montel Jackson versus the 17-0 unblemished record of Daniel Marcos. And this is a absolute banger of fight. It should be phenomenal. I am looking forward to this one. One of the most highly anticipated matchups of the card. And I think it'll deliver. 17-0 with Daniel Marcos, you know what you're getting. You're getting a striker, a polished one out that who works every level very, very well. Someone who I have always been the highest on in the past. I think he lost to David Grant. I think he can be taken down or grappled. I think there are holes in his game, but someone who, if you are left on the feet with him, will attack your legs, work your body very well, very good in and out movement, and makes his reads as the fight goes on, and is also able to land trips in the takedowns as well if he needs to stall. Really, we've seen that. A good ability to win fights. Montel Jackson is more of that one-shot power guy. A ton of power on the feet. Everyone's mentioned his hands are bigger than Ngannou's. You have to give him that there as well. A ton of knockdowns, and he is more of that moment winner. He does have a grappling history as well to go out there and take people down, so I do think he could do that in certain spots here, but a guy who wants to be patient, land that big shot, and has had enough success getting that big shot to winning fights. I mean, knocked out Damon Blackshear in like 17 seconds. We know he has power. That is his skill set. So in a spot like this, I understand where Montel Jackson is favored. I think he has the power to land that big shot. I think he has the grappling that maybe he mix in takedowns here as well. But if he doesn't land that one big shot, I think he loses minutes. I think Montel Jackson is way too patient in these spots here. And although he can land those big shots, his legs can get beat up here. I think he can lose optics versus a guy in Marcos who has proven he can win on the judges' scorecards with his optics and the striking. I think I'm going to pick Daniel Marcos here. I've never been super high on Marcos. I thought David Grant beat him. I bet against him in that spot there as well. But Montel Jackson, I think, is just too patient. I think he is someone who doesn't always fight to the best of his abilities. And although he can land that knockout shot, I do not think it happens at a minus 210 indication. So I do not mind the dog shot here on Marcos this week. Now, of course, the pass there for Montel Jackson, I could look stupid, but I think more times than not, the line looks a little closer, especially in extended affair. DraftKings-wise, 7.5K. I think that Marcos is a solid underdog against someone who is cheap, someone who I do think wins more often than line and tails, and someone who does have volume on the feet, although that could be potentially limited by the knockout power that Montel Jackson has, the takedowns he does have, maybe limits exchanges there as well. It could be a slower paced fight, but if I'm picking someone to win, he's 7.5K, I will be looking to play him. Montel Jackson, phenomenal tournament play because when he wins, he scores well. 126, 106, 131, 116, 148. Knockdown upside, potential wrestling upside, finish upside. You know the guy's power. So very interesting fight. I did lean Daniel Marcos, but should be an absolute banger, and I'm hoping for the best in this one here. Then we have the 30-8 Santiago Ponzinibbio versus the 18-5 Daniel Rodriguez. I don't have much to say about this one. It is two older guys in the back end of their career going at it, and I think there's a ton of variance involved. I think the better technical fighter at this point of their career who has slowed down maybe a little less in their exchanges is someone like Santiago Ponzinibbio, and he's someone I'm going to be picking based off of volume and maybe even ground success, but his chin's not always there. He's there to be hit. He's been wobbled. He could definitely lose this fight, and it's just... Although Daniel Rodriguez has shown amazing volume, amazing boxing, amazing process, he's looked slow recently. He's been hit. He's been finished in his own right. He's been taken down. So these are two guys who are getting slower at the tail end of their career, people who don't have the same juice in them as they had before. Which one of them prevails? Which one of them still has more left in the tank? I think there's so much variance. It's not worth much time spent about it. I just think that the more processed fighter who I see winning minutes is probably going to be Ponzinibbio, so I did choose him to win. DraftKings-wise, like I said, a ton of variance. 8.2, 8K. Either of them could win by knockout, whether it's the volume, the attrition of someone like Ponzinibbio, if the volume goes on, or if Ponzinibbio's chin is shot, Rodriguez landing a big shot and getting a finish win there. I think there's a ton of variance. I'm scared to go all in on either side. I did pick Ponzinibbio to win, so by default I will have some of him, but I also will have plenty of Rodriguez because, like I said, the chin is a deficiency for Ponzinibbio. There could be a path there as well. So give me Santiago Ponzinibbio to win this fight, but older man affair, ton of variance, not the most confidence pick, but it should be a fun striking affair for as long as it lasts. Then we have the co-main, the 19-2 Renier de Ridder versus the 7-0 Bo Nickel. Another very, very fun fight. We're kind of getting those progressive steps up in competition for someone like Bo Nickel, but another one that I think is pretty interesting in that it could probably disappoint again. I know a lot of people were left disappointed last time in Bo Nickel's performance. I thought it showed that he is willing to do what it takes to win. Maybe not the entertainer we want to see, but a guy who has his mindset of becoming champion and will take whatever path is easiest for him, even if it's a boring path at that. So I don't mind that there. I think in this spot here, Renier de Ridder is the better grappler, in my opinion. I think he's going to have a ton of success if it does get down to the ground, but Renier de Ridder has struggled on the feet. That's why he was evens to Kevin Hall, and that's why people have their doubts about him, but he's someone who can be hit, who was losing striking changes to GM3, who has quit on the other fight promotion scenes because of his lack of striking defense, and someone who, if he doesn't get top position, can struggle there as well. So is he going to get top position against one of the greatest NCAA wrestlers of all time? It's hard for me to see that otherwise. And I think that on the feet, the better striker is probably Bo Nickel. He doesn't have the same volume, but he's got good in and out movements, very good shot selection. I do think he's able to land those big shots. So I think the better wrestler is Bo Nickel. I think the better striker is Bo Nickel. I think the better minute winner is Bo Nickel. So aside from Renier de Ridder getting on top position, his path to victory is pretty limited. There could be some crazy exchanges, but I do think Bo Nickel wins this fight more times than not because he dictates where it takes place. Because then I'm DraftKings, I'm not like super investing in Bo Nickel because, you know, he's had some slower performances, 9.1K, but he's still Bo Nickel. He still has a ton of knockout upside. Renier de Ridder has quit before. I think there's takedown upside for Bo Nickel as well. I will be sprinkling him in a tournament play, but again, not forcing him into his option at 9.1K, but someone who I will be playing. Renier de Ridder has submission upside, another GPP play down low. He does have the opportunity to break the slate in a submission win. I just think that Ryan Loader wins more often than him, and he's $200 cheaper. So we'll be sprinkling him in, but not my favorite play in general. In the main event, we have a 17-5 Corey Sandhagen versus the 24-4-1 Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo getting that step up in weight and level of competition in what is a phenomenal main event. And we do have ourselves a big favorite here. And I'm going to skip right to it and say that I kind of agree with the way the line is. Look at the way Deiveson Figueiredo fights. He's got incredible durability, very good power, and very good volume at that as well. And I think that his well-roundedness and his killer instinct has led him to have a lot of success at 125, but he was also someone who was cutting a lot of weight to get down there. Now he's facing someone who is going to have more volume than him, is someone who's going to be bigger than him, is someone who's going to be able to grapple probably better than him there as well. So aside from the power that he still has and the potential submission grappling he still has, he's being outmatched in a lot of these categories, and these are still categories that I think that Corey Sandhagen has proven to stay safe in against better level of competition. So I think all these aspects point towards Corey Sandhagen win this fight, whether it be with his size, length, and volume on the feet, or even if Sandhagen wanted to land some takedowns of his own right. We have seen Figueiredo stuck down there as well. So I don't mind this fight as a whole. I think it's be fun. I think it's be high paced, but you have to favor all the attributes that Corey Sandhagen has, especially being the larger of the two weight classes, fighting a better level of competition, younger fighter. All these things point towards Corey Sandhagen, so there is no hot take from me. I do think Corey Sandhagen wins, and in doing so, a solid play at 9.4K because he does have 5 rounds to work. 133 against Font, 120 against Vera. I think Sandhagen wins. That's about it. I think that Figueiredo has 5 rounds to work, so if he wants to go out there and land those big shots, sure, but is he going to dominate more than Umar did? I don't know. So no hot take. I am taking the favorite in this one. I think Deiveson Figueiredo puts a fight, but all the attributes and signs lean towards Corey Sandhagen getting this one done, being the bigger of the two and showing why they're kind of our weight classes in the first place. So give me Corey Sandhagen. That's going to do it for me here, though, on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm quickly running through my quick picks. We're taking Corey Sandhagen, Bo Nickel, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Surrey City, Daniel Marcos, Mason Jones, Misha Tate, Azamat Bekaev, Julian Robertson, Gaston Bolanos, Thomas Peterson, and Ivana Petrovic. On DraftKings, Jones, Sandhagen, and Robertson up top. In the mid-range, GPP-wise, I think that Montel Jackson, Surrey City, and Misha Tate have the most upside of the three. And then with a ton of variance in the old man fight of the night, Ponzinibbio and Rodriguez, I don't mind sprinkling either side. Underdog-wise, I think that Quang Bang Lee has a good chance to win. I think I picked Daniel Marcos to win outright, so I think he's fine. And then I think both Julian Miller and Dontel Mays have that tournament upside that maybe I'm getting to in contrarian upsides, whereas both Loader and de Ridder are fighters who I think could break the slate in a win. I slightly lean towards Loader being my cheap underdog punt play of the week, but definitely an interesting slate to say the least. Betting-wise, nothing locked in yet. Make sure to check out later this week my Cool Bet Best Bets that will be posted here, along with some promo stuff inside, so check that out for sure. Should be a really fun card. I'm looking forward to it. I wish you all the best of luck in all your DraftKings betting endeavors, guys. Let's make some money.